Have you ever felt like something was deeply wrong with the world, even when everything in your own life seemed perfect? That's exactly where we find Siddhartha after his first shocking encounter with suffering. He returned to his opulent palace, but it was like seeing it through new eyes. The beautiful dancers seemed like hollow puppets, their movements a temporary distraction from the inevitable decay he now knew awaited them all. The music that once brought him joy now sounded empty. Even the most exquisite food tasted like ash. He looked at his wife, the beautiful Yashodhara, pregnant with their child. He was flooded with an overwhelming love, but it was poisoned by a new, unbearable sorrow. He saw her future, and it was filled with the same aging, sickness, and death he'd witnessed outside the palace walls. His nights were plagued with vivid dreams. He dreamt of the palace pleasure gardens turning into a field of corpses. He saw himself as a frail old man, unable to move. He dreamt of sickness, of death, of watching everyone he loved suffer. But amidst these nightmares, another vision persisted, the serene face of the peaceful ascetic he had met. It was a vision of a path beyond suffering, a truth that could break the endless cycle of birth and death. He was torn. He had responsibilities, a wife he adored, a child on the way, a father who had dedicated his life to his happiness, and a kingdom that would one day be his to rule. How could he even consider abandoning them? The texts say his wife Yashodhara saw his torment. She didn't try to distract him with more pleasure. She knew him too well for that. She understood that a profound change was happening within him. Then, one night, a messenger brought news. A son had been born to him. You'd expect joy, right? But Siddhartha's first words were haunting. A fetter is born. He named his son Rahula, which means fetter or impediment. This sounds harsh, but it wasn't a rejection of his son. It was a cry from a man in terrible conflict. He loved his child deeply, and that very love was the strongest chain binding him to the life he now felt he had to leave. He went to see them. Yashodhara was asleep, cradling their newborn son. Siddhartha stood in the doorway, his heart breaking. He longed to hold his baby, just once. But he was terrified that if he did, he would lose his resolve. He knew, with a certainty, that was both a divine calling and a terrible burden, that he had to go. That very night, he made his decision. In what's known as the Great Renunciation, he resolved to leave. The palace was silent. The musicians and dancers who had entertained him just hours before were asleep, sprawled in awkward, ungraceful positions, a stark reminder that beauty and pleasure are just illusions. He called for his attendant, Channa, and his favorite horse, Kanthaka. He then returned one last time to the doorway of his wife's chamber. Tears streamed down his face as he looked at his family. He couldn't risk waking them. He couldn't say goodbye. He knew if Yashodhara looked at him, if she placed their son in his arms, his courage would fail. So he turned away. This wasn't the act of a heartless man. It was the impossible choice of someone who believed he had to find a greater truth, not just for himself, but for everyone, including the family he was leaving behind. As he rode toward the palace gates, a symbolic figure named Mara, the personification of worldly temptation, appeared. Mara offered him the rule of the entire world, unimaginable power and glory. But Siddhartha replied, "Even a universal emperor grows old, falls sick, and dies. I seek something beyond this." Miraculously, the legends say, gods cushioned his horse's hooves so no one would be awakened. The gods were in a deep sleep. These details highlight the cosmic importance of this moment. This wasn't just a man leaving home. It was a turning point for humanity. Once far from the city, as dawn broke, Siddhartha stopped. He cut off his long princely hair with his sword, removed his royal jewels, and swapped his fine clothes for the simple robes of a wanderer. He turned to a weeping Channa and said, "Go back. Tell my father I have not left out of disrespect. Tell Yashodhara I have not left for lack of love for her or our son. I love them more than words can say. But I have seen suffering, and I cannot rest until I find its end. If I find the truth, I will share it with them, with everyone." He embraced his attendant, stroked Kanthaka one last time, and walked alone into the forest. He was 29 years old. He had given up everything: family, wealth, power, comfort, even his own identity. He had no teacher, no map, and no guarantee of success. All he had was a burning question: can we find an end to suffering? The prince was gone. A seeker had been born. His real journey, a 6-year quest for enlightenment that would change the world, was just beginning. Thank you so much for watching. If this story moved you, please like, subscribe, and share it with others. See you in the next video.